Sometimes you want to say, "Oh, it's so cute how she's trying."
Cold or warm on the surface. That's an effect that manifests in the atmosphere, and it would be the temperature there that determined it.
I just started recording our commentary of this.
Yeah, the moon is really what sells me on Earth being round. Hold up. It goes away, but we do see the same face of the moon all the time. So that's another mystery. But those two things combined, the fact that the moon is less privileged than us rotationally, in the sense that the face that if you were standing on the moon, you could eventually see everything on the planet, versus the planet Earth only sees one face of the moon. That tells me it has to be a sphere, because we would see it all the time.
The moon.
If it was not, if it was,
it's a sphere because it has to be.
I guess I'm done with my intro, and thanks for listening, and I'll hand it over to Maya.
So everyone just be aware, I'm going to upload this. I mean, I just started recording every commentary we give on this live stream. I'm going to upload that tomorrow.
While he's pulling that up, I want to remind you folks, our guests are linked in the description. So if you'd like to learn more about the views of either side, you can by clicking on their links below. All right, Snake, they can see your screen as clear as day.
All right. Is the word tab showing up?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I'm going to be reading off that.
Let's see what Snake got.
Or do you see my text document, or do you just see the...
Right now you're fully sharing your screen. If you wanted to click on a certain window to share, you could.
It's going to be comedy.
You'd have to unshare and then go back to sharing.
Okay, sorry about that.
Not a problem.
Hey, Matthew.
They're
oh, yeah, I see it.
Down in the description. That includes the podcast. Modern Daybate.
I got a question
are
for you,
uploaded
brother.
to our podcast within 24 hours of each debate.
Go for it.
And
do you trust NASA well enough, Matthew, that you would wear one of their spacesuits that they supposedly wear on a spacewalk?
A picture of a globe.
Walk outside the ISS. Would you trust one to get
so flat Earth is pseudoscience. It's fake skepticism. They accept photographs and tabletop experiments if they support flat Earth, but they reject photographs and valid experiments if they support the globe. They have an impossibly high standard of evidence for real science, but will instantly turn on a dime and lower their standards if the same type of evidence supports the flat Earth. But you can't have it both ways. We have experiments proving how gravity works. Do they care? No. Do they have experiments showing how gravity works as they say? No, but they accept their conjecture.
The Virgin Joy must be a
they'll speculate about some woo-woo electromagnetic whatever that might be responsible for suspending and moving the sun inside the atmosphere, and that's good enough. But meanwhile, rigorous peer-reviewed science is dismissed as a conspiracy. They insist that the sun is in the atmosphere, but will never send an expedition there. Any photographic evidence of actual expeditions to the moon are claimed automatically to be fake. So there's a double standard. Regardless,
did he just say, why don't we fly to the sun?
Predicts none of the data. If you make predictions about reality,
the North Koreans already did, right?
He said, can't even accommodate the data.
They're saying that the sun's in the atmosphere, but they never made it.
They now avoid even trying to make a map at all possible costs, because all flat maps.
If Issa was here, he would be like, man, the reason that they
flight paths,
flew to the sun is because they landed on the dark side of the sun.
Path of the sun and moon, etc., etc. Flat earthers don't even have enough real confidence or practical skill to make a map, let alone send an expedition to the things that they claim are in the atmosphere, like the sun and moon.
I wonder if he made a map.
Nor will they even try. To quote Kai, that's why we keep it vague.
Yeah, you guys aren't trying hard enough to go to the sun.
So it doesn't matter to them because all the evidence is a conspiracy.
After I record, I'm going to send it. I'm going to send it to Steve. I'm going to send it to Steve.
Instead of facing the possibility that they might be wrong.
This is terrible. However,
Bob Nodell bought a laser gyroscope to prove no rotation. Then he
on its own. However, it's only because I know what could be responded with.
He had no idea what he was talking about.
I need Witsit and Kai to fucking bring hellfire down.
He dismissed it rather than.
They will. This is the Globey's turn.
In their presentation misrepresenting what physicists actually say about the subject, quote mining things, cutting
they will
things
bring
out of
hellfire
context.
down when they get their turn.
So
again.
what are we supposed to do in the face of such reckless hubris? Well,
yeah, this is an easy Monday morning.
Replacement.
They kicked ass the last time with the
excuse for why they can't
with
produce
the old girl. Old girl is kind of more like she said,
falsifications come down to a few typical misunderstandings, like
accommodating
why no one falls off the
to the conversation. While there was this really
water can be level,
obnoxious hard guy, the guy that was just like more disruptive.
Properly understood.
This guy seems like he's gonna be a snarky version of that,
falsifying
and the woman is gonna be exactly what you guys just heard.
Flat earthers universally reject gravity, and it's
kind
for
of
good reason.
Moderate,
if
modest,
you understand gravity, you can't.
And
really
giving her view, which is actually honest.
Okay,
I'm saying she's gonna give it.
She's honest and ignorant, right? She's honest. And
I'm not even. It's not that. I'm saying she actually sticks to the rhetoric that
gravity.
That's
I would like
unlike
to explain how the stars rotate in different directions depending on the hemisphere, because it's not physically possible on any flat plane. And let's see.
Yeah, this guy's definitely more of a.
Thirdly, the feed you saw for most of this presentation was the live feed from the Himawari 8 Japanese weather satellite, a non-NASA installation.
I think you give us better arguments.
Flat earthers can falsify it at any time. Just go find weather data that contradicts the unfakeable live feed.
This is what you have to do with.
They will not do this.
Contradicts the
and the only other photographic evidence I want to bring up is the photos of the curved water at
Let's bring in some really hot new information about the globe.
You got it. And with that, we're going to jump into open conversation. Want to let you know, though, folks, as mentioned, a lot of juicy debates coming up that you don't want to miss. For example, at the bottom right of your screen, I'm pulling up this new one. Are trans women women? It is going to be a controversial one between Vosh and Dr. Bogardus as they collide next month.
Do yourself a favor, don't bother.
Hit that subscribe button. With that, we're going to jump into
Steve
open conversation, as mentioned. Thanks so much.
He has a heart for this, otherwise he wouldn't do it. I mean,
okay, you keep on talking about experiments, so I think Kai has a question for you.
Yes, we have a question for Taylor. So Taylor, what are the 3 constituent parts of a scientific experiment?
Well, you're looking for a specific answer, so why don't you tell me?
We're just looking for the right answer.
Well, yeah, because you think
let's just talk about an experiment. Let's not waste time. Let's talk about Cavendish.
Okay, so I will answer the question that you can't answer.
It's going to be good.
You have an independent, dependent, and control variable. Okay. And the crucial part is establishing cause and effect. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's how you conduct a scientific experiment. So let's
talk about Cavendish experiment, cause and effect.
Before you interrupt me. So when we're talking about gravity, that means you have to, if gravity, space-time has to be the independent variable, you have to be able to manipulate the independent variable. And that is not what the current science, which is actually pseudoscience, is ever doing. So
no, you don't. That's just a lie. So let's talk about the Cavendish experiment.
Cavendish wasn't trying to prove gravity, but go ahead.
Yes, it does.
Talk about hand waving.
It proves that there's an attraction between masses, which is gravity.
Cavendish wasn't trying to prove gravity.
It doesn't matter what he was trying to prove. It matters what the experiment shows, and the man Cavendish is irrelevant. So what does the experiment show? It shows an attraction between mass. End of story.
No, it doesn't actually.
Yes,
it's actually very inconsistent.
End of story.
So are you claiming that you always get the same results?
No, that's the point of experiments, is you can repeat them.
Right, as less than 10%.
Sometimes the experiments have errors. There's a torsion element to it. Some people get the torsion element wrong.
Okay, so but
you can't have the string have any torque in it.
Do you agree that if you do an experiment 10 times and then you only get the right result one time and you dismiss the other 9 to user error and just cherry pick the one out, that's not actually science?
Mm-hmm. So 99% of the time you get the same answer, and it's mass attracts mass.
That's incorrect.
Which is how did he
get that from what Witsit just said?
Wait, I want to hear it.
No, Cavendish was not overturned by Einstein. They still use that experiment.
Newtonian physics. So you said mass attracting mass. That's saying that gravity is an intrinsic property of matter. That's Newtonian physics. It was superseded in 1915. Gravity is no longer considered an intrinsic property of matter.
That's fine. There's still an attraction between mass.
Well documented if you just research it. I can pull up some academic quotes for you if you would like.
There's not an attraction between
I remember you mentioned something about a stationary plane and a dielectric plane. Would you
Yeah, where's the experiment for that?
Wait. Before that, would you like to concede that?
Absolutely not. You're lying right now. That is a experiment that absolutely shows attraction between mass and mass. When you put two heavy masses next to each other, they will always be attracted to each other. And you can take out the many variables. That's what the torsion bar is for. You take out the variable of spin and torque.
You better hit them with the electromagnetic, the whatever magnetic force is stronger.
They will attract each other. You can
hit them with it right now. God damn it!
The other way. You can put the masses on the other side, and it will immediately be pushed to the other side.
Yeah, but we don't want.
Okay, again, you're just saying that, but I've actually researched it in depth. It does not consistently work. But the real problem, I'll just go ahead and cut this off.
You're lying.
I'll go ahead and cut this off at the head for you, man. You didn't control for the variable of electrostatics, which is 10 to the 39th power stronger than gravity. So even if it was consistent, which it objectively isn't, the attractive force there that's objectively and measurably there is 10 to the 39th power stronger than gravity. Can you rebut that for me?
Ooh. Yep, because you can you can test for that by putting
the actual physical answer there, if you want to get technical, is that gravity acts over 1 over r squared. Falls off as 1 over r squared, and electromagnetism falls off as 1 over r cubed. So what you see is exactly what you would expect, but you have to interpret it correctly. It's a question. Why are we even able to stand up? I mean, let's,
no, she did.
No, wait.
Basically, what they're saying is that we this big globe and we're sucked into towards the center of it because it's so massive.
Lady.
And then the question becomes, well, why aren't we just a big flat pancake on the ground sizzling? And the answer is because we have electrostatic torsion holding us standing up. I mean, in a way, it's a bit of a miracle that we're able to stand up and ambulate so easily. Trying to program a robot.
I need to invite her to a dinner party. She doesn't.
I've never heard anybody say that.
She doesn't.
I'm being a bit hyperbolic here, but
that's a concession.
Just so you know, the electrical gravity torsion, equilibrium point, that's exactly what you would expect. It's just that when the gravity force is 1 over r squared versus electricity is 1 over r cubed. So in very close distances, electricity is much stronger. Over longer distances, gravity is stronger.
But
and then
that's
they have
just
a balance point.
That's called a begging the question fallacy. So we're actually disputing that very thing. He just invoked Newtonian physics, which is over 100.
You're lying again.
So are you saying Einsteinian physics is mass attracts mass?
That is an observable fact. Whether you're in Einsteinian physics or not.
Does the theory of relativity say that mass attracts mass?
No.
No, but it doesn't falsify necessarily the Newtonian.
Now she's about to contradict herself.
The theory of relativity doesn't say the sky is blue either.
Okay, so what you're saying is that you're trying to prove a gravity that was proven to no longer work in your model, and it had to be updated to the theory of relativity.
It didn't have to be updated. Mass accelerates towards mass.
Mass no longer
was not overturned by Einsteinian physics at all. It doesn't matter if it's electrostatic or not. Mass accelerates towards mass, whether it's electrostatic or not.
Okay, yes, I understand. First of all, gravity is the effect of the bending and warping of space-time according to the theory of relativity. That has superseded Newtonian physics. The reason electrostatics is important is because
of the debate.
Well, you're trying to prove something that doesn't even happen to exist in your model anymore. So
irrelevant.
No, that's a lie. It exists. Gravity exists in Einsteinian physics. Stop lying.
Not mass affecting mass.
I want to be sure we hear
mass
from
accelerates
Kai,
towards mass. Yes.
Just to hear
it's
from
not
Kai,
the same
something to say, Kai.
Geometry, man.
James. All I was going to say is it's absolutely applicable. If we're going to be discussing gravity, we need to understand the supposed.
It sounds like Witsit and Kai are smiling behind what they're saying.
You only need to know its behavior.
Yeah, because it's just like
no, but they're not even understanding what they're
behavior.
So here, let's ask
they
this
need to
question.
do
So
something
you said that
about
gravity's
him,
been proven
which
over
I
and
knew
over by
because that was the
scientists.
same
Can you
thing that I
describe the
didn't like
difference
about
between
the other
correlation and
debate.
causation?
They need to do something about him
Causation is
interrupting,
something that is
and
caused by
he's
something
saying
else.
things
Correlation is
unjustifiably.
just appearing
And
at the
instead
same
of
time as
explaining
something
to
else in the
us
data.
his position,
And how
he
do you
needs to stop him
differentiate
and
between the
call
two
him
in the
on
academic
his
world?
claim.
You eliminate variables.
You have
cool.
an
So he can
independent,
illegitimize
and
him
control
so that he
variables.
can
And the
continue
key
speaking
part is to manipulate the
uninterrupted
independent
by this
variable
peon.
and see if it
But of
affects
course,
the
I'm
dependent.
not really a
So
debater,
when they
so
were
I can't really
No,
say what
studying,
you know
would
what's
be
really
best.
cool
gravity,
about this?
we're going to
We're
use
just giving
Einstein
commentary
gravity because that is
here,
the most
listening
current
to it
explanation.
live.
What was
But
the independent variable and the dependent
Yeah,
variable?
some of the
I'm just
ridiculous.
somebody on the sidelines trying to tell Mike Tyson how to box. That's all.
No, when they actually
no.
proved,
Naturally, we do this all the time, but
I don't know.
I
Bending
think
and
this
warping.
is a really good idea to give
That's the
commentary
foundation
over
of
this.
everything, according to you.
Because
But Kai,
we say this all the
I
time.
be killing
and
this shit
didn't
too. Hold
work
on.
anymore. They had to update it to Einsteinian physics. Are you not
I'm not
Kai
talking about
bodied
Newtonian
them.
physics.
Kai bodied them the last
mass
debate.
attracting mass is Newtonian physics. And actually, hilariously enough, Newton said, please do not attribute that to me because the idea that innate brute matter could attract innate brute matter and act on it through the vastness of a vacuum is to me so great an absurdity that no man with competent faculty of thinking and philosophical matters could ever fall.
There it is. That was eventual.
Why you interrupt so much, bro? Why you interrupt so much?
Why do you just waste time so much?
Yeah, because he's pissed.
Just in case Jen has anything to say. We haven't heard from you in a while.
Anymore.
If you had anything.
Yes. Shut him
Jen,
up.
you're muted.
Anyway.
Wait, you're not muted. It shows you as unmuted, but we're still not hearing you.
This is the best glove argument I've heard all day, James.
No. Did I accidentally mute? I'm so sorry. I got excited there. So perhaps my last few arguments were missed. But thank you for calling attention to that. I was interested about one of the arguments in your opener, which is just maybe taking a new direction about, you mentioned that you can't see the stars. Now, just to clarify, is the claim there that you can only see stars within the Earth's atmosphere, and once you're like too far, it's blackness or something? What could you refresh my memory as to what the hell is blackness?
That's a great question, Jen, because the claim is not consistent. So we'll start with Neil Armstrong. At first, they say that because of the glare of the sun, you cannot see stars because of that. Then he, in another interview, he says that the sky in space is a deep black from the view of the moon, and also cislunar space, which is the space between Earth and the moon. So that is the original claim. Now that has been updated with recent astronauts that have gone to the ISS. Some of them say we can see stars, whether we're on the sun side or not on the sun side, whether it's day or night, we can see stars all the time. It's the one astronaut said it was so bright because of the stars, it's almost light. But then other astronauts on the ISS say it's a deep black, that there's no stars. So it doesn't stay consistent. We don't actually know the real answer because these astronauts, both astronauts that have been to the ISS, the same location, have different recollections of their eyewitness testimony, which in a court would be very suspicious and should be treated the same.
Yeah, so what's happening is they're just lying again because they know that they're taking the statements out of context.
Above the atmosphere,
you can look in a particular direction
anymore,
and you will be blinded by the sun. You can look to the right and you will see the blackness of space and stars. It's like looking into a flashlight. You can't see the flashlight, but if you turn to the side,
here comes
you can
Captain
start seeing
Answer
things
everything.
again. And you guys know what you're doing.
Don Pettit said, we're not lying. We actually just
played it for everyone to listen to it, dude.
We did more research than you did. We didn't have to read from a paper or anything. So.
No, you clipped it out.
So Don Pettit said,
I'd like to respond.
Okay, you call us a liar, but I mean, we played it for the audience.
And you need another word.
If I wanted to take a page out of your book, I'd take the next minute to blow you about how only the stupidest, dumbest, most idiotic could ever believe something like that. It's true, but I won't waste time like that.
That's what you said in your argument.
So no, I described what pseudoscience is. So when you take clips of people saying, we can only see the blackness of space. And then you take a clip of someone saying, when you're looking at the sun, you can't see stars.
He tried to, but this motherfucker
you're
keeps
quote
talking.
mining, you're taking
when they asked what the independent
there are certain
variable
directions
was, that was a great question. Because
stars,
if you don't have that,
see stars.
Then
we just
remove that context.
You're not testing your supposition. It's pseudo.
Correct.
We just played a video. And one of the astronauts says that during the light of the sun, you can see stars, and one says that you can't. So you're wrong.
No, because it depends on which direction.
No, they said even during the day. They said even during the day.
Right. Which is why you trim the context, because it matters whether you're looking at the sun or not during the day.
So if you're not looking at the sun, you can always see stars in space.
It depends.
Then you would disagree with
a lot of different factors.
There may be two effects. Are you familiar with something called a snow blindness, or it's an effect when you go skiing? Like this, there's a reflection.
Oh my God! Bless her heart.
Sort of
just go to snow blindness.
Anyway, there's all sorts of different.
Elijah, you need to be careful, man.
I guess you're probably a bad example, but.
We're just pointing out they have contradictory statements. He's trying to say that we're misrepresenting them. We played it for them. I encourage everyone to go look at it.
It's possible that within the atmosphere, there's more twinkling caused by the atmosphere itself. It seems maybe that you're having trouble understanding how there can be an atmosphere. Did you give any thought to what I said last time about the moon being the thing that's holding the atmosphere?
That sounds wild to me. But
it's totally wild because we have to contend with what are apparently contradictory but not contradictory boundary conditions or binding.
Oh, she's getting a little saucy.
Yeah, that's a bit saucy.
The speed of light is 3 times e to the 8, so that's like 3 with 8 zeros meters per
Step
second.
aside with it. Let Kai handle this.
Fast, very fast compared to the speeds that we're used to.
It's a global.
Sorry, go ahead.
Global conspiracy, but they can't get their story straight somehow.
Stop self-projecting.
Yeah, our story or the astronauts who literally say you cannot see stars. Okay, and these are just a few of, there's so many of these clips. They say you cannot see stars in space.
It's called a hostile witness, bro.
But if you were looking at our star, because it's so close, our sun is so close, okay? If you're looking towards our sun, you're not going to see behind it because all the light from the sun is going to be glaring in your face.
Then Don Pettit literally said, even when they're looking at the sun, they still see stars.
You can see all of them.
That's what they're saying.
Said when it's daytime. So.
Wait, okay, whatever. I have to address something because my homie Bob, right? So you just now said that whenever he used a gyro and he found the degrees, he didn't want to accept it and he dismissed and all stuff. That's actually just patently false. So what happened was he actually ended up taking the gyro to different altitudes at the same latitude and got over a degree in variance. So would you agree that if you use a gyro to detect the axial rotation of the Earth at a certain latitude, but then you change altitude and then the degree changes, that refutes the idea that it's because of axial rotation?
No, because you're still measuring rotation.
At the same latitude, it's just...
Since you clearly have never done any science at all. You've never had to calculate your...
They're running circles around him right now.
You've never had to... You're demonstrating. You don't understand what a margin of error is. But
can you answer the question?
Measured,
sauce in the sauce, bro.
I did. I said no. If there's rotation measured, then rotation is measured.
Hey,
it doesn't matter if there's a margin of error.
Would the rotation change if you keep the same latitude on a globe?
It could. Was he in a different location on the globe?
He was at the same latitude.
But I thought you had a bunch of quotes before saying all these physicists couldn't distinguish their measurements from a flat, stationary surface, and now you're saying you can.
That's true, but this guy claims that the gyro proves the Earth is spinning. So I'm going to see if he even understands why. So on a globe, there's latitude lines.
That?
On a globe, there are lines of latitude, and the Earth spins at different rates based on the size of the sphere. So if you stay at the same latitude, then this axial rotation remains the same no matter where you are on that ball. If you're on the same latitude, isn't that right, Taylor?
Nope. And Bob, he thought it would.
Oh, this is so
Yo,
good.
Matthew, are you rolling with him? Is this your man?
Margin of error.
I'm not done with my statement.
He's not very good at debate.
Whose man is this?
Could it be that Earth's not a globe and it doesn't matter how good at debating you are?
If it shows rotation,
Somebody come
then
get
that
their
shows
son.
rotation. If it shows degrees of rotation, then that shows the rotation of the Earth. Then he changed his story. He said,
Okay,
well,
actually, what happened-
the degrees of rotation changed. Therefore, the machine doesn't work anymore.
No. I actually know him. You're avoiding the question because it destroys you. So the margin of error for a gyro, margin of error can give you up to 2-degree variance. Margin of error.
Sure.
Why does it always stay the same? How come the margin of error always changes at a different altitude at the same latitude? Wouldn't the margin of error be consistent at all altitudes?
Not necessarily.
Okay,
What
so
if
appeal to
what if
instability.
gravity changes with how far you are from the center of the planet?
That doesn't change the speed, the rate of the Earth spinning.
Yes, it changes the speed of time, which I know, the rate of time rather.
But that's not what the gyro
Precisely what
doesn't
relativity is saying.
time.
Altitude
Gyro
does
doesn't
change the
detect time.
diameter slightly, so
The gyro doesn't detect time. So try again.
I said nothing about time.
Okay, so here's the deal, man. What you're saying that he's lying. The truth is that the gyro, right, a ring laser gyro,
I didn't say he's lying.
It uses the Sagnac effect. Okay, it was discovered by a dude named Sagnac. He says it's a vortexual movement in the ether. Now, he was not aware of that at the time. He said, this is interesting. We have 15 degrees. It doesn't look good right now. So then he kept looking into it. He decided to test it further. Actually, a professor told him an idea that you can test to see if it's the vortex of the ether moving or if it's the Earth moving by keeping a certain latitude but changing altitude. When we did that, it changed over a degree based on the altitude. That debunks that it's because of axial rotation.
So you make up the ether, even though that was disproved. Okay.
You can't respond to my point, man. So
yeah, he's not responding.
We can move on.
You're invoking a magical field to describe how your experiment failed you.
No, I'm not invoking a magical
field. The ether
field.
is a magical field.
Falsification is independent of replacement. What I'm saying is you're claiming that it's because of axial rotation, but if you maintain latitude and change altitude, it changes, debunking your claim. I can offer a replacement. I don't have to, but I will go back to the very person that discovered the effect the ring laser gyros built using, which is called the Sagnac effect. What he said was it was the vortexual movement in the ether. That's all I said. I don't have to replace it. Your claim is wrong. It doesn't prove the Earth is spinning because it changes at different altitudes.
How come he thought it would prove the Earth is spinning before the experiment ran, and he changed his mind after he failed?
He had to further research it. That's called actual intellectual honesty.
He had to accommodate his failure.
Can I just ask, did Sagnac conclude that the Earth was flat from his inquiry? Because ether model doesn't mean flat Earth. That's two different classes of models.
That's right. But in his opener, he tried to call out Bob and slander him. So I exposed him for not knowing what he was talking about. And I told the true story because I know him personally. And the truth is he went to different altitudes and it debunks the claim of axial rotation.
It's unsafe to mention the ether, though.
His slander in his opener. So it has nothing to do with if the Earth is flat or not. That's true.
Even though it measured axial rotation both times. Interesting.
It literally didn't, though, because it changed up.
So you can't actually replace the model. One reason is what I already mentioned, is stars. I'm just responding to what you said. You claimed you can replace the model, but that's the reason you won't make a map.
This kid like 17?
I did not claim
he's very inexperienced, man. He's not ready for this. He wasn't ready for this.
It's not even experience. This isn't a game. Somebody inbox me. I'm not going to tell y'all who.
Well,
talking about would you like to come debate?
Spin in different
I'm trying to start up a YouTube channel.
Just
listen,
a straight line on
I'm not
the equator,
playing with you guys.
On a flat
this isn't a game.
Okay, well,
this
first
is
of all, they
quite
all go
literally
in the same direction.
enslavement.
So when you say that they spin in different directions, you're just patently wrong. All stars go east to west.
Live out.
They don't go in a different direction. They all go the same direction. Whenever you look south, you're looking in a different direction. So then you have clockwise and counterclockwise relative to perception, correct?
But I'm here to tell the truth.
Yeah, but that can't change no matter how many times you spin around.
No, it changes based on which direction you're viewing it.
No, it doesn't. It changes on which hemisphere you're on. You can look in any direction on the northern hemisphere, and it will spin, I think.
Yeah, he's trying to get clicks on his channel, man. That's what this guy's
in any direction on the southern hemisphere, it'll spin counterclockwise.
Well, no,
clockwise and counterclockwise are relative to perception. They all
Elijah, I think you're hot micing, bud.
No, I'm talking to Mickey.
How is this? You can't get that spinning effect on a flat Earth.
Well, the sky is spinning, my man. So I guess you need to catch up. We showed you mainstream physicists telling you that there's no terrestrial observation that proves that the Earth is moving. We even quoted Einstein saying that.
Yeah. So do you think that means that the Earth is not moving? Just because we can't measure it?
Well, no, I think it's the default position, because to do anything in the real world, whether it be fly planes or helicopters or shoot interballistic missiles or use railguns or anything the military does, or electromagnetic propagation of weapon systems, we have to assume that
we can't measure the Earth
dielectric plane and that it doesn't move. That's the default position with all practical weapons. You're claiming something antithetical.
Well, that's because the technology is being deployed at close range to the surface. Okay,
100 miles.
It's a scales thing. What's the alleged radius of the planet?
Oh my God!
Miles would be 6,666 feet at 100 miles. That's a big difference. You miss your target by over 6,000 feet.
Yes.
So she's asking the questions, man.
Okay,
what do you mean?
Myself a long time ago, I wasn't going to try to do math on
you're a physicist,
but I appreciate the pushback.
None of you know anything about geometry.
I mean, but this is the point. The overall arcing point, right?
It's a different subject.
I want to just be like mansplaining, but here's what I'm saying, right? So we had the default position with all evidence. You're making a claim antithetical to that. Now, there's a misnomer where in the world everyone thinks flat earthers are so dumb. Oh, you think the Earth is stationary? You're crazy. But the truth, we've proven that the Earth is spinning. But the truth is, even Einstein himself will tell you that you cannot prove the Earth is spinning from the Earth, and that all these physicists will tell you that. But then we have no-name people that appeal to authority, those very authorities, saying that it's been proven from the Earth, which just shows ignorance of the subject. All we're pointing out is that we have the default position. You have the burden of proof if you're claiming something antithetical to that.
Well, we have models that make predictions that we can then verify.
So you get them, girl.
The live satellite feed from space shows live weather conditions. You can go debunk that anytime. If
he thinks it's live
in the weather.
You think it's like live 24/7?
We got models.
Is that what you think?
Yeah.
No, it's literally not. It has like 10 to 15 minutes in between each shot. You didn't know that?
It's live. You can't Photoshop. I can't even Photoshop a thumbnail in 10 minutes. So
you don't think
you just suck.
So you're supposed to Photoshop every piece of weather data from an entire half of the globe every 10 minutes.
The clouds don't even match half the time. You're just making stuff up.
Then go show me where.
Go check out Globebusters.
Sunday.
Show me.
Can I just ask, like, in your model, if the Earth is stationary, what's moving?
The sky, the stuff in the sky.
Bro.
So there's a vortexual movement in the sky, and that's where everything moves. That's why Polaris has stayed the same place forever.
Yeah. And they reset.
Everything moves. So that, don't you think that would take a lot of energy?
Yes.
Wow.
That's why
the reason why we can't tell that we aren't at rest is because the universe abides by minimum energy, not because we're not at rest. We're not because we literally are at rest. We can easily falsify the notion we're actually literally at rest by virtue of the fact that the sun rises and sets. It's just a question of how do we account for the fact that there's so much stability, but also so much motion. And that is by the same principle that gives us our sensory perception that we can rely on.
It's spinning so fast, it's stationary.
Like no matter where I am, I'm at the center of the universe. And the planet
it all makes sense now.
That's the least action principle. And we can use that to build up things like, go ahead.
So what I was going to say is, I believe one of the quotes, I don't know if we included this, but there's no celestial observation that can be done to differentiate whether the Earth is moving or the heavens above are rotating. So I want to know when the academic community established and how they established that the Earth itself is rotating and not the celestial objects in the sky.
Yeah, that's an equivalence principle. So when you want to point to that, there's this indistinguishability of perspectives. We need to use an operating principle that has been meta-analytically established to be the case in many other things, which is the least action principle. So you take your two possibilities and you establish which one would take less energy to get going. But what does it mean to get the system going What does it mean to energize a system? Where does our planet get its energy from of motion? That's a very hard thing to think about, but go ahead, please.
So you're just talking about a philosophical argument. I'm actually wondering how did they actually prove it? How did they?
They assumed globe spheres, and then they model gravity as an attractive force in that, and it's, I guess, close enough.
Thank you, Jen.
The three-body problem doesn't have a solution. That is an issue.
This is why Jen is an MVP, is because she's intellectually honest. As she said, they assumed globe, but we want to make sure, how do we know the assumption is correct? How do we know that the Earth is actually rotating? And they gave us a speed too, 1,000 miles per hour. So how did they get that amount, that measurement?
Well, she answered it, right? And so I applaud you for that. I applaud you for being honest. And to be fair, to help you out, it doesn't prove one way or the other, right? Like the fact that it was an assumption and that you can model it out, that doesn't prove or disprove it, right? But the point is that it's just an assumption. And you're right that for the Earth to be stationary and everything in the sky move, there would require a field of energy that is immense. But who's to say that's not the case? And Nikola Tesla would say that any attempt to explain the movement of celestial objects without a field of energy is a futile pursuit destined to oblivion. He was just a literal genius. So yeah, there's a field of energy. The sky moves. Polaris doesn't move. To claim otherwise, and you say it's just the least action, it's at rest. We're spinning, revolving around the sun.
It feels like we're at rest. I'm not even at a point of saying what's actually happening. We have to start with what it feels like, because we're building these principles up intuitively and perceptively. So we can all agree that it feels like there's a center to what we're experiencing. It feels like we're in the center of the universe. That's kind of nice. But anyway, that doesn't make it real, is my point.
What could it be real?
We can account for that by saying, well, there's this tendency for the universe to just be like ultra lazy. So even though it has intrinsic motion, it's also ultra lazy with how it dispenses that motion.
Whoa,
so you're
Michelle
navigating between two boundary conditions. So what we've done now is look at the evidence. And now we want to say, okay, well, what actually explains this? And it may be a question of, well, what is the most reasonable shape to assume that the planet is? And then we can build a model from that, rather than looking at data to then try to infer what the shape of the planet must be based on data, because any interpretation of data requires what amount to assumptions.
Freaking
so the question
heap of hot garbage philosophy, man.
On the get-go to actually build the entire model from.
The only assumptions are always the globe. It's like when we fly a plane, we have to assume the Earth is flat and stationary, but we can assume it's actually curving and spinning, and gravity keeps it perfectly to where it just presents itself flat and stationary. When we shoot a laser and it goes and hits the other target and it's not blocked by over 400 feet that should block it, we can see that clearly the laser hit it, or we can assume that light must have had to have bent right over it and we just can't tell. See, there's only one side that consistently makes reification fallacies and assumptions, and that's kind of our point. We need substantial proof, right? And it doesn't exist. And philosophy is not going to cut it. And that's what the truth is. And you've nailed it on the head. Those will tell you that it's a philosophical discussion and that the geocentric Earth can never be disproven, but we avoid it at all costs because of the horror of a unique position. That is a philosophical bias. That is not science. And if we can at least have that honest distinction made, then we'd be happy to let the chips fall where they may. Make your own decision. But it's not modern times where we're painted as crazy people denying science. No, we're denying philosophy and religion. That's what we're denying.
Mm-hmm. So did you want to jump in here, Taylor?
Yeah, I want to address the fact that we do shoot lasers to prove that the moon is not in the local atmosphere, at least. There is a laser reflector on the moon. Takes longer than it would if it was in the local atmosphere. But the main point was we do not use a flat Earth to calculate flights. They use a globe Earth. That if on a flat Earth, all the flight paths are curved instead of straight. But on a globe Earth, they're straight.
You can present
What's up with that? Also, James, if I could share my screen real quick.
I just wanted to make Taylor aware that the mainstream says that the moon is in the Earth's atmosphere.
Elijah didn't get you too.
Are you aware of that?
Not
they
how
say
you
that.
Say.
They recently discovered that.
Not as close as you say. It's only technically the thinnest possible atmosphere, but it is. You could fit all the planets in the solar system in between the Earth and the Moon. It's just how big the atmosphere technically is. So you're again taking things out of context.
Oh my God.
No, you just said it wasn't.
What is that? What's that supposed to establish? Sorry? What does that fact establish?
What I said?
Yeah, it's just unclear what's the point of what you just said.
Because he said something about the moon is not in the atmosphere, and I just wanted him to know that the mainstream says that the moon is in Earth's atmosphere.
Yeah, you're playing with semantics. So it's much farther than you guys claim by leaps and bounds. But what I'm sharing...
how far is the...
He doesn't know how far. He says leaps and bounds.
I'm not sure the exact number, but you can fit all of the planets in the solar system between them.
The exact amount is leaps and bounds.
Okay, so
well, that's what NASA says.
Yeah. No, I don't believe pseudoscience, man.
Yeah, you guys think it's much closer, but we can reflect a laser off of it.
So this is the problem, though. If you don't know the medium, then you don't understand what you're perceiving. So it can be perceived to be many things based on the medium. And I don't buy stories of vacuum. That's process.
Well, we do know the medium because we went there and put a reflector on the moon.
You didn't go anywhere, bro.
I'm talking about humans. What I'm putting on the screen is showing the rotation of the stars, the apparent rotation of the stars. It's actually the rotation of the planet, but you know what I mean.
I didn't see
it doesn't matter which direction you face. They're going to be spinning the same clockwise or anti-clockwise fashion. So that's all I wanted to share. I'm sorry if I took up too much screen sharing.
Okay, nothing.
Just recap what we already discussed.
Hey, I got a question.
No, you didn't. You never addressed the fact that it doesn't matter which direction you face. It matters which part of the globe you're on, which direction they go. And that's a problem for the flat Earth, because then the distance between stars is getting shorter and larger. And if we're on flat Earth, but it's not a problem on a globe Earth.
You're done.
I just wanted to address something that you brought up before about when you're flying a plane, you don't assume a flat Earth. So Witsit is going to pull up a conversation we just had with pilots like a month ago. So also I just wanted to pull up a few things here. So this is aerostudents.com/course/flight dynamics. Okay. So any introductory pilot is going to learn about assumptions that are assumed when they're flying the planes they're flying. The first one is that the plane is assuming there is a flat Earth. The Earth's curve 0. Second is there is a non-rotating Earth. No Coriolis accelerations and such are present. So I can pull up another...
Well, how come you forgot the assumption that the plane is a rigid body, even though we know that the plane is not a rigid body?
You think that's analogous to not accounting for Earth curvature?
Yeah, just they're not accounting for the flex of the plane.
Because it's negligible.
Because it's simpler math.
So it's
negligible.
Just to make Taylor aware, because he's probably not aware, so they tell us the radius of the Earth is 3,959 miles, which means there should be an 8-inch drop per mile squared. That number is exponential. So just an idea, so you get some numbers. Over 100 miles across the Earth, there should be a 6,660 foot drop. Okay, that's immense. That would absolutely need to be taken into account if you're flying a plane. So
I don't actually think it would, because I just real quick looked it up. It says 7.2 miles is commercial aircraft relative to 3,963 radius of Earth, 0.01% difference.
Mm-hmm.
You'd be so close to the surface that it would make total sense to approximate it. Obviously, not totally, but close to what would appear to be a plane.
Okay, we're going to play the pilots. Is it cool if we just play the pilots real fast? Because someone says no flat earthers ever fly a plane. I know over 10 of them, but here, let's play it real fast. It's just 13 seconds. And so we'll see what the pilots say, if that's cool with you, James.
Ready?
Okay.
Yeah, so basically it's like the Earth spins and curves, but you fly the plane like it's flat and stationary. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it could be flat and stationary.
Okay.
They weren't ready for that red pill at their lunch break, obviously. But there you have it.
Did you see that guy's face? He looked like he was like falling in love with that idea. He was like...
There's so many, there's tons of videos. They obviously get shadow banned on YouTube, but there's tons of videos where people just ask the pilots, hey, do you account for curvature or rotation when you're flying the plane? No, man, we fly it.
If you're flying at 0.1% of the size of the planet, you wouldn't expect to account for curvature. Can you accept that? It's a very small.
What do you say? Gravity's dipping you down?
No, the idea is that you have imagine a sphere that just is super big, okay, and you're an ant on that sphere. You're a teeny tiny little nothing. It's approximately flat when you're on a very small area of it.
Okay, but if I fly 5,000 miles and I keep just going straight, the Earth's going to be going down beneath me, right? So
no, you're always going to be at the same approximate distance because you're not going to want to deviate in terms of where you are in gravity because it takes so much energy to overcome gravity. You only want to go as high as you absolutely need to. Okay, so I just looked it up real quick. It says 5.9 to 7.2 miles. Even in a high estimate, that's 0.1% of the radius of the planet.
You want me to tell you what the actual pilots say? You want me to tell you what they actually say? So they say they maintain altimeter pressure zones. They use altimeter to maintain pressure zones, and they go up and down, and that's what they're fluctuating. And he says gravity is actually going to take you around the curve without you noticing it. That's the official explanation.
That's the least action principle. That everything is saving energy to the greatest extent, meaning that geodesics happen spontaneously. And a geodesic in flat space is a straight line. But a geodesic on a sphere, the shortest distance between 2 points, that's something called a great circle. So there is some curvature that happens, which can be followed. But this is extremely hard to visualize. I wouldn't start there if I was trying to actually understand what's going on here, because you got to really put yourself in the position like you're an ant on an anthill trying to figure out something that is inconceivably larger than you. So it makes a lot of sense to acknowledge what seems attractive to believe, but also to realize that
have to do with their previous
to conceive these things. Doesn't mean we can't eventually get to the right answer, but we should be very cautious and skeptical.
But they let her. Because the radius is a certain size. If I'm 1 foot off the Earth, I would see the curve of the Earth just 1 mile away. So it's not just too big to see. I would see it 1 mile away.
Yeah. If you start flying off of the Earth in a straight line, eventually you're going to be going basically straight upward. So you're going to have to actually be adjusting to maintain a straight upward position. You don't need to adjust.
It has to conform with the ball. It wouldn't be going up. You would have to actually be dipping the nose down. You would have to the curve of the Earth.
You would have to adjust and try to go straight up if you were flying off of the curve of the Earth. You don't have to make any adjustments to maintain a level position because the forces automatically align, drag and just the aerodynamics of the plane will always put it level. You would have to increase the engines in order to keep going at a steeper and steeper angle.
Okay, your answer is gravity pulls the plane around the ball. If you don't want to absorb it, I don't care. That's objectively what it is. But here's my question.
I actually said aerodynamics.
We fly the plane like the Earth is flat and stationary. So could it be flat and stationary?
No.
So it would be different. We'd have to fly planes different on a flat and stationary Earth?
It would be impossible based on what physics we observe for it to be flat and stationary. It would violate gravity, which is something we can.
Gravity was made to explain. Gravity was made to explain the Earth being a ball, though. So that's so backwards. We came up with gravity to explain omnidirectionality on a ball. That's why we proposed gravity. Then we're still trying to figure it out. We've never discovered the graviton. The theory of relativity doesn't work when we apply it to the universe. It's off by 95% with dark matter and dark energy. We have numerous problems. Quantum mechanics has completely dismantled relativistic applications. And Newtonian physics had to be thrown away 100 years ago. We keep gravity because it has to exist for the Earth to be a ball. No. We don't know the Earth's a ball because of gravity. We know gravity exists because the Earth's a ball. That's called a begging the question fallacy.
I have some more documents I would like to read. I just have some more documents I would like to read that again reiterate the same thing. This one is from www.faa.gov. The engineering analysis and design of the aircraft dynamics model for the FAA. Okay. It says on page 32, 2, the observant reader will notice that the aircraft equations of motion were calculated assuming a flat Earth. I have another article here. This is from nasa.gov/API/citations, a mathematical model for the CH-53 helicopter. The helicopter equations of motion are given in a body axis with respect to a flat, non-rotating Earth. I have so many of these documents, by the way. This goes on. There's like over 100. So for you to say that they are assuming, and we have the video of the pilots, they absolutely do not account for a globe or a moving surface. They're flying over a flat and stationary plane. It's not even able to be argued at this point.
You can say no, but you have not provided. The math is calculated as flat because it's easier, because it's negligible, because the up and down direction, what is that, pitch and yaw or something, is corrects itself. You don't have to pilot the plane to dip down.
Okay,
let's move on to the thing you ignored, which is the flight paths, which are mapped on a globe.
There are numerous flight paths that debunk the globe, though, so that's a very bad argument.
Emergency flight landings where people were dying or giving birth, they had to land, and they landed in a place that would not fit on a globe.
Also, we would take tons of paths that we don't take. We would take tons of paths that we don't take on a globe. There's direct shots across a globe that we never take. But when we look at the flat Earth map, it makes perfect sense. And we are not claiming the flat Earth map is perfect because we don't listen carefully, because you love to bring up how we don't have a map and somehow that makes the Earth a ball, right? This is why I tell you falsification is independent of replacement. The reason we can't make a map is because we don't have an accurate central point to start the Cartesian coordinate system. So it's impossible without an accurate central point. It's illegal to go within 500 miles of each direction of the North Pole. So that's the problem. So for all the Globers out there that love to talk about the map over and over, it's an impossible task because we don't have access to the central point to map it out.
No, it's not. You might have to file some paperwork, but it's not illegal. So
it has to be approved.
You claimed that there were locations on the Earth that don't exist on a globe?
What?
No, I said that
emergency flight.
They need to get back to
no, they landed, and I believe, I can't remember specifically. One of them had to do with Alaska, but where they landed did not make any sense on a globe. It would have been far out of the way. Okay. Another flight that people observe that's very suspicious is there should be a direct flight from, for example, Buenos Aires, Argentina to Johannesburg, South Africa. Okay, that would just be the tip of South America to the tip of Africa. In order to get a flight, the best flight that you can get, the fastest one, you have to stop all the way in the Netherlands. Okay, it's not a direct one. That would be a great example.
Was that you, Elijah?
The globe.
But you think you're frustrated now? Look at the chat. Look at the live chat.
You want us to share the screen and show you that flight path?
Holy shit! Those people are out of their minds.
Sure, because I got a flight path to share with you as well.
Cool. We have all kinds of them.
There's a flight path that goes right past that.
We're about to show you the actual flight path, my man. And so I don't understand why Globers bring this up. It's really weird. It's really weird.
Because it debunks the flat Earth.
It doesn't, though. It doesn't. That's what I'm trying to explain to you, my man. Flight paths don't help you. I promise.
Well, I don't think we ever got.
I can't hear you.
Oh,
Jen, we lost.
She's having mic trouble.
You're muted,
Jen. Can you hear us?
It happened again.
Okay, no worries.
I'm so sorry about that. Boomer tech here. I agreed with you that it ought to look flat if you're sufficiently close to the surface. So
it's not about looking flat. It's about being obstructed.
Makes sense to model it as flat, even if it's a sphere.
Yeah, it just happens to work out perfectly. That's the answer. Gravity makes it work out. Gravity accounts for the curvature that you would have to account for. That's the actual answer. We know the answer.
You're basically staying at the same level of the gravity field because that's the minimum energy solution, is to deviate minimally from a stable gravity field. So if you can get into a point where you're between two pressure gradients and you're sort of sandwiched between them, you just ride that and it remains stable approximately if you're at a same distance from a globe.
Well, you have to go up and down, actually. So actually, you don't just maintain the same.
Oh my gosh, he doesn't even understand.
We had a 13-minute conversation with pilots explaining it in depth.
Just get back to.
And our point is, it's just to address the misnomers. It's like they say, you can, if you Google it, you can see the curve of the Earth from a plane. No, you can't. I just now asked two pilots right after our plane landed, do you see curvature up there? No, of course not. So it's flat up there. Yeah, of course. don't even hesitate. Anyone that's actually flown a plane, I used to work at an airport, I know many of them, everyone knows that the earth looks flat in a plane. Everyone knows you fly the plane like it is flat, and everyone knows you fly the plane like the earth isn't moving. You can say, well, yeah, it just appears that way. The equivalence principle, relativity, it makes it look that way. Gravity makes it
makes it look that way because of the relative size, okay? You are 0.1% of the size of the total planet off the surface. So the amount of area that you're capable of seeing relative to the total surface is quite small.
Okay, so Google's definitely wrong when it says you can see the curve of the Earth from a plane, then, right?
Well, that's unclear exactly what that means, so let's just put that to the side. But I'll grant you that it's
very clear what that means.
When you're in a plane, it can definitely look like what you're looking down at is flat. However, if I was going to agree with you and say, yeah, the Earth is flat, what I would expect to see under that model is I could look out and see all the way to the other end of the Earth. And so it's a question of, well, why can't I see that? Why doesn't it appear so predictably at that point?
Why can't I see Mount Everest
fluctuation
from New York?
Kai, come back in and crush her.
In your model, it is physical, but here's a flight path right here from Santiago to Johannesburg.
Yes. Shut up. Let Kai speak.
So right here, you see on flat Earth, it's a straight direct.
No, Kai said, "Let me speak." I knew because I knew she would have
out of your way
because I know what she would say to that.
Down.
Yeah, no.
You could fly straight across the South Atlantic Ocean, but no, you go hundreds of miles out of your way and come back down. There are probably 30 of these flights, though, which is why I don't understand why Globers bring it up. So
he's getting back to the main
on the
point.
flat Earth, but
he's getting back to the main.
So we added hundreds of unnecessary miles to get out of our way. Is there a rebuttal?
But they don't realize
my own flight path.
They're on that.
To address this one, they might just not book flights there. So you have all these private companies that know that the Earth is flat. You have thousands of employees that are plotting these flight paths, and they know the Earth is
Nobody
flat.
said that.
Globally, every single company
ever says that.
And they all say
nobody on our side ever says that.
There's a globe.
So you're not rebutting the actual.
That's just interesting.
So you don't know.
And no, they might not just go to Johannesburg because of, again, these are private companies. They want to make a profit. So maybe there are more flights to the north of Africa than the south of Africa.
So there
are plenty of explanations.
Gotcha. So we can just make up stuff. Gotcha.
It's hard to know what this evidence is actually saying.
Yeah,
I would have to fly. You would have to fly that far. That's the most direct path on a flat Earth. They have to fly that way. Mm-hmm. That's why they do it. It's not because there's probably a reason. No, the reason is that's the only way you can go there. That's the reason. That's why there's not one flight that exists that goes from Santiago to Johannesburg over the South Atlantic Ocean. It goes up and comes down because on a flat Earth, that's the direct path. That's why they do that. You think that private companies that spend money on fuel, their entire business plan is fuel cost effective?
Yeah, that's actually why they shut down the South Pole flights, is because they weren't cost effective. They used to fly them, and they don't anymore. And this just appears to be
she's closer,
an economically viable route, because there would be presumably people that wanted to go from Dakar to Johannesburg. So I don't know. This isn't very compelling.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
well, there is. It's just not economically viable. I mean, it's not even clear what a direct path means, right? So you got to be really clear as to what, because we're not even agreeing as to what if we don't agree on the shape and a direct path, we're not talking about the same thing.
And all of the continents there are completely distorted.
They're arguing with each other about.
You know that the shorelines are not like that, which is why no flat Earth map ever makes sense.
On the mainstream Mercator map, completely off. They show that Alaska is so tiny, and it's like,
where's the curve?
All the time.
These are direct flight paths. So
I wanted to go back to
the variable of economic
Mount Everest or whatever.
Yeah. Gains that you get from going to one particular location over another is eliminated. So we have a flight path from Sydney to Santiago, Chile, and New York to London. 5 times the distance in less than twice the time. So why would companies do that? Why would they waste fuel?
So the fastest air current
and that's also impossible. So that's another way.
the fastest air currents are literally right there where you drew your little dotted line. You would catch an air current over the Earth. Secondly, you actually have to apply a scale to the southern portion of the map. Did you know that? So that's not, you don't just look at it and say, I think that looks too far. You realize that you actually have to properly apply the scale. So credit to Professor Dave to not know how to use scales. So
that's what happens if you flatten the Earth. The scale is off. The southern hemisphere is distorted. That's why a flight that takes 12 and a half hours is 5 times longer than a flight that takes 8 hours. And if wind is a factor here, it would have to be record-breaking hurricanes, 250 miles per hour.
Well, then why does the plane take so much longer when it goes back the other direction against the current? If it has nothing to do with it.
It's not much longer.
It is, actually. Sometimes up to 2 to 3 hours.
As long as you
2 to 3 hours. 2 to 3 hours.
Yeah. So that's not going to speed up 5 times.
5 times? Well, we don't need 5 times.
The distance is over 5 times as long.
No, that's what I'm trying to say.
Preferred direction for the trade winds is actually what you'd expect on a globe, though.
I'm trying to explain to you guys that
globe is constantly getting a different edge of the sun, and so there's preferred direction for the trade winds to blow.
You guys didn't watch the intro where I explained that actually all the currents work better on the flat Earth and showed you how you can actually map them out. But here's the point here. So you're lying and saying it's a certain distance because you're listening to the goofball Professor Dave, and a lot of globe earthers do this, but you have to understand you have to apply a scale to the southern hemisphere.
Explain that. How would you fix the scale of the southern hemisphere? Distort Africa immensely so that Australia and South America are closer?
So are you saying you don't know how to read azimuthal maps? Is that what you're telling us? Because
you don't know how to read them.
Yeah, you have to apply a scale past the equator. It's just like duh. Like you guys use memes. You guys use memes
on a globe.
You don't use scale.
If it's actually flat, then that's going to be the distance. Otherwise, you're going to have weird spatial distortions.
They don't understand their own freaking model, whether it's some azimuth map or a globe.
Spatial compression, where you can travel further in less time.
This is what you still don't understand. So your meme is a straw man because you didn't apply the scale. Now, that does not mean that's what the Earth has to look like, because the Southern Ocean is basically unexplored and we don't actually know what's there. I don't know if you're aware of that, but basically no one goes in the Southern Ocean, and we don't know the central point to map out the proportionate layout of the land. You have straw manned even the map. You've shown a basic misunderstanding of how to use maps.
The azimuthal projection fits on a globe. Because if you
a globe, it is a globe
between Santiago and Sydney, then you can do that. But then there's going to be gaps somewhere between the edge of the globe of the projection.
A map is the same as the globe.
Yeah, there are going to be areas that aren't mapped out accurately, which is convenient because no one goes to the Southern Ocean. And I also explained to you, you just drew a path. Okay. I've objectively debunked you 3 different ways. I'm not going to talk about it for like an hour.
You're now trying to debunk me with continents you're claiming that you haven't discovered yet.
You go on that little dotted line of yours, and that's going with the currents. When you go the other way, the flight takes at least 3 hours longer. And then to tag on to that, this flight basically never happens. We actually wanted to go try to do it, and you can't find a one-way. You guys just like to draw lines on maps and make up stories. This is a very rare flight if it ever happens, and it's much slower the other way, proving that the reason that the plane goes faster is it rides the air current. It's just objective. So we can move on.
How does that prove? How does that establish a flat Earth?
He's saying it debunks the flat Earth. I just now refuted his claim. I didn't make any claim about it proving a flat Earth. I'm making a point that it doesn't prove a globe Earth.
Yeah.
Right. So we can move on because
the jet stream.
Yeah, go ahead. She's got another point.
Oh, I just thought we talk about entropy maybe, since we have the Church of Entropy here.
Yeah, well, entropy is basically just another way of saying the least action principle. So entropy is saying that energy is constantly diffused. That's what entropy says. So there's two ends of it. Okay, one end is we observe a tremendous amount of motion, and the other end is it appears that for a lot of our perceptions and observations, things are at rest. So we have to go in between those two boundary conditions and determine what assumptions we need to make to construct a model, how many assumptions we actually need, and in what order we ought to express the assumptions geometrically or algebraically in order to generate reasonable predictions that we can then look up in the sky and say, oh, our model, it's lining up in the sense that it's telling us maybe something like a future eclipse. Entropy doesn't apply per se to cosmology. Entropy is more about life because it's more about thermodynamics. Whereas in cosmology, it's more about what you might call a stasis field. So something that's moving, we can establish that there's movement going on. You can look at the time lapse going across the sky and establish that there's some type of movement, but there's also a perceptually a tremendous amount of stillness, and we have to account simultaneously for both of those effects if we're going to have a satisfactory model, because clearly these other models aren't quite convincing enough in the sense that this debate is still happening. So I do appreciate having a chance to go through these arguments. I'm ready to go to the questions. I don't know how everyone else is feeling, but
oh my God, so many missed opportunities.
Okay, what she's trying to say is entropy will always increase, and your name is
no, but
because
they missed the opportunity to talk about the horizon being geometric, and it was almost getting there. Then they went back to the thing
due to the
where Kai had a chance
to your cosmological claims as well, because they make claims about the natural world.
I was just going to cover within that
something, but then it was just too much bouncing around going on.
Yeah, it went back to the flight thing.
Not necessarily, because pressure is defined relative to a container. You're not always dealing with it.
We know that.
And that's where mechanics is really complicated, is when you can't conclusively say where it makes sense to claim that there's a boundary, because there is no actual boundary, but there are pseudo boundaries and a conservation in some sense of pseudo boundaries that you can use as a model.
Pseudo boundaries.
But again, this is sort of beyond the scope of what we want to talk about here right now.
This is why I wanted to talk about gravity, is because gravity can act as a container for air. And it doesn't matter if it's electromagnetic or not. All it matters is if air particles are pulled toward other masses.
Gravity has a singular vector of down relative to the center of mass, and gaseous surfaces and omnidirectional infinite vectors. So a singular vector down to the center of mass would never in any way contain it. That's why it doesn't contain it at the surface where gravity is the strongest.
I know your word salad is
word salad means things don't make sense, but that made sense.
It doesn't make any sense. Air doesn't just move omnidirectionally just because. Air pushes against what was that?
Air
pushes. We're gonna go into Q&A in 2 minutes.
Okay.
What the fuck?
Air doesn't just just go in different directions. Air will press against other air, so it can move in an upward direction, but gravity will pull that air back down, and it will push against other air until it balances the force of gravity.
You have a vacuum chamber, and you open up the vacuum chamber. What happens to the air?
Double down. Here we go with the double down.
Surrounding the vacuum chamber.
You have a vacuum chamber, and you open the little latch.
Yeah.
Okay.
It goes.
What happens to the air outside the vacuum chamber? What will happen?
It pushes into the vacuum.
It rushes into the vacuum because
of air pressure.
Like the shovels.
High pressure
and
goes to
low grave
pressure.
Right here.
Why?
So if you have this vacuum up in the room and then there's gas below it, and then you opened up the vacuum, would the gas pressure still go up into the vacuum despite gravity being there?
Yes, because it's being pushed by the other air molecules.
Okay, thanks for playing.
Yeah,
we can't extrapolate this metaphor to the scale of the planet, because what you're talking about is a clear boundary. It's something that was vacuum sealed.
Please say
and you opened it and pressure you calibrated, you can't then analogize that to the cosmos because there's no clear boundary. And I'll go ahead.
When you would have to show in the academic world that you could have gas pressure without containment, and they cannot show this in the definition of gas pressure.
Gravity also.
It's in the definition. Yep. Chemistry.elmhurst.edu. Gas pressure is the collision of gas molecules against the container.
No.
The physical container.
It's also pressure against other air molecules. So the reason air pushes into a vacuum is because the air molecules are hitting each other, pushing them, and there's no air in the vacuum to stop them from getting pushed. So
pushing them to what?
Without using
there is pressure differentials. If you're talking about the scale of the Earth, if you're talking about the scale of a propane tank, that's not the scale of the Earth. There is pressure differentials when you go up a mountain. So the further up you go, there's not air pressing down on the air at the top of a mountain, not as much relatively at the bottom, because it's lower pressure. The thing that's keeping the thing that's pushing the air down is gravity at the top of the mountain.
Stupid.
What we have to do is go into Q&A. I want to remind you, if you want to hear more from either side, folks, you can click on the links below. You can hear more about the views from either side, as we really do appreciate our guests. And we have to say, my dear friends, if you haven't yet, hit share. That really does help us get the word out. If you think that you have a friend who you're like, oh, they didn't enjoy this debate, now's a great opportunity to hit that share button below, and you can share it with them, enjoy it together. And like I said,
this is elementary grade level, bro.
Have a positive influence as we strive to be a neutral and fair platform for everybody. So with that, we're going to jump into the Q&A. Thanks very much for your first question. This one coming in from Joe.
I think this is worse than kindergarten.
We all agree that regardless of shape, your Earth is pretty dope. Thanks for that, Joe.
Yeah, the Earth is super dope.
And thanks for your super sticker from Steven. Appreciate your support. As well as Dr. Anarchy, who says, hey, Witsit, when Blue Origin or SpaceX starts to offer commercial seats on a spacecraft to orbit the globe, would you be willing to take a trip and admit that you have been wrong all this time?
Well, if it's just 4 minutes of weightlessness, which is identical to a vomit comment, I probably wouldn't admit I'm wrong. They'd have to let me independently verify it and document it. I also know there's something called a circumference of light. Divergent rays create a circumference of light. You could go up on a flat surface and appear to have a slight curve due to circumference of light. So no, I probably still wouldn't believe it. I know you guys don't like that. If they took me out of space and I could float around and see that the Earth was a ball from the outside, then yes, I'd believe it, and that'll never happen.
This one coming in from Do Appreciate Your Question. Will Stewart says, Jen wins, doesn't matter what she says. As well as, you got a fan out there, Jen. He says there are many variables that can explain different testimony about
Jen
what
win,
can be seen.
doesn't matter how stupid she says.
Visor technology, polarized versus not, light refraction, etc. Are you considering this when claiming contradiction?
Well, was that question was for us? I must have not followed the question there. I'm not sure.
I think it was. They said there are many variables that can explain different testimony about what can be seen. The visor technology, polarized versus not, light refraction.
What the fuck is this guy talking about?
This one claiming that there's a contradiction.
Yeah, that doesn't work when the same person contradicts their own testimony from the same occurrence and experience.
This one coming in from Sean Hawkins says, I'm still waiting to see Kai zoom the sun back in after it sets. I think this might have been regarding one of your earlier pictures or videos. Says, I'll repeat it. They said, I'm still waiting to see Kai zoom the sun back in after it sets. If she can't, she has no choice but to concede to curvature.
Okay. Hello, my obsessive fan. There's videos on YouTube, but also once the sun disappears because of perspective, so once it's actually disappeared beyond the vanishing point, then you obviously can't bring it back. So, but there is no curve. It's simply perspective.
You got it. This one coming in from Kango44 says, it's very, 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 very easy to measure the shape of the Earth. Humans did it 2,500 years ago. I did it last week myself. It's a globe. Also, buy a telescope. Then you can see what the planets look like.
Okay, look through a telescope probably 20 times, so save it. Obviously, putting sticks in the ground is not a measurement. You have reverse engineered a calculation. The calculations are not measurement. Of course, it works the same on a flat Earth. Yes. So why do you have to bring up something from 2,500 years ago? If we have NASA getting $60 million a day, it seems kind of weird. Can we get physical measurement, not presumptive calculation?
Calculations are relationships between measurements.
Yeah, its calculations are synonymous with measurements, though?
What did I just say?
I'm asking, are they the same?
No.
So you have to have physical measurement first, right?
That's what the sticks are measuring, yeah.
Then what are they?
Calculations or interpretations on measurements. That's right.
What are the sticks measuring?
Angle of the sun's rays.
Well, and the shadows actually. But if I do that same thing on a flat table, I can map it out with calculations to make the table a sphere. Did you not know that?
You can't, but you know.
Okay.
It also presupposes a distant sun, which they had no way of establishing.
And assumes no refraction.
Yeah, you're ignoring the time factor, but that's cool.
No, yeah, we're pointing out the time factor and how stupid the claim is for Globers to regurgitate what Google told them that it was proven 2,500 years ago. It's ridiculous. Grow up.
It's not Google, it's the navigators.
There's no primary documentation of this actual occurrence. Did you know that?
Okay, so we can move to the next one. This one coming in from Kango44 says, showing the planets through a P900 and saying, quote, look, the planets are wandering stars, unquote, is the very height of dishonesty. Anyone can produce very clear images of the planets with a cheap telescope.
It's so funny because the definition of planea was wandering star in the past.
Yeah, and actually when you look at them through telescopes, they pulsate. You'll never actually make a static observation of the lights, which is the entire point. And actually there seems to be an analog and digital difference, which is why the P900 catches the cymatic patterns.
This one coming in from Balthazar228 says, do either of the flat earthers agree with Alden's theory of level Earth?
Not familiar.
Gotcha. That's it. They're just trolling you. I just wanted to see what you'd say, though. Okay, this one coming in from, it's one of Vosh's memes. But Will Stewart says, there are many variables that can explain different testimony about... Oh, we got that one. Sorry about that. Ilabaka, thanks for your question, says, Witsit, why hasn't Bob published or repeated his gyro test at different elevations? If that's true, he'll get fame and a Nobel Prize. What is he waiting for?
He does have the documentation. Why is he not published it? I don't know. You'd have to ask him. Actually, the reason he didn't publish it, the real answer, I guess he's cool with me saying this, is because he gave it to be an exclusive in the Flatlanders episode that hasn't come out yet. And so he was trying to do them a favor for letting them exclusively release it. And then secondly, he will never get a Nobel Prize because it's not about being honest or having new innovation or any type of discovery. It's about fitting the status quo of consensus. And you'll just get hand wave dismissal like we got from Taylor earlier, where he's like, no, margin of error.
You're a liar.
Margin of error. So that doesn't it doesn't really matter, to be honest. But there's your answer.
Didn't you just go on and on about how Einstein overturned paradigm of physics? So that contradicts what you just said.
No, because it still fit within the consensus, actually. That was thanks for making my point, which was Michelson Morley debunked the fact that the Earth was supposedly spinning, so theory of relativity had to come in and throw their little cape on to save the heliocentric model I was talking, and so then it was once again fitting into consensus, which was my point, so we can move on.
This one coming in from Do Appreciate It. Doofus Manfred says Bob released the full data from his FO gyro. The different rates detected corresponded directly to the FOG fog being at temperatures out of spec. Hashtag GLTF.
Okay, try to not use so many acronyms. We're not 7th graders. And I don't know what you're talking about. He hasn't released the full data. He gave it to them exclusively. So I think he might have made that up.
This one coming in from Do Appreciate Your Question. Will Stewart strikes again, says you claim contradiction. But what about... Did he do that one twice? No. It's a very close to one we were at earlier, but it's a different one. He says, you claim contradiction, but what about variables in visor technology, refraction, position, etc.? That isn't A and not A at the same time and in the same sense. Have you considered this?
Yeah. Again, it doesn't work if it's the same person talking about their own experience, but then giving contradictory testimony. Just like in court, they would be considered an invalid witness.
Yes.
You got it. This one coming in from, do appreciate your question. Tim Pryor says, they say particles of the atmosphere reach to the moon. Not that it's in the atmosphere. Read the whole article.
Wow.
How can particles of the atmosphere go out past the moon without the atmosphere being out past the moon?
This one from Robert Summers. Well, hold on, just to be sure I read it right. They say particles of the atmosphere reach to the moon, not that it's in the atmosphere.
Well, it's a question of like the gradient falling off. It's a bit of a Theseus's ship. Like, how dense does the atmosphere have to be before it's not the atmosphere anymore? It's arbitrary in the sense that, there might be a particle from the planet that's on Mars right now, but we don't count it as part of the atmosphere, do we?
How many
we have
drops
no
of
idea
rain
where the
until it's
atmosphere
raining?
We have no idea where the atmosphere is.
I'm curious, didn't like NASA actually just tell us
Robert Summers.
that
You have to have pressure to have a gradient, by the way, honey.
didn't NASA just tell us that the moon is
Regarding gyro, even if the values did change outside of a margin of error, what was being measured then?
That was for him, I would imagine. It was for me? What's the question? It's got to be for him, right? If it's outside the margin of error.
He said even.
No, I think it's the gyro experiment.
Gyro.
Right, he's the one that claimed it was margin. He's the one that claimed it was margin of error. So I'm
He's
not
asking
sure.
if it's outside the margin of error.
They say even if the values did change outside of a margin of error, what was being measured then?
Yeah. The change in the vortexual movement within the ether. So if you had a tornado, it's wider at the top and it's smaller and tighter at the bottom. So you're measuring a differential of movement based on the vortexual motion. So it would change with altitude at the same latitude. On the globe, it would stay exactly the same at the same latitude.
This one coming in from, do appreciate it, Will Stewart. Oh, he's hungry. He says, if you maintain 30,000 feet round or flat, you fly at 30,000 feet. Whether the Earth is round or flat. Round, you stay at 30,000 feet. Flat, you stay at 30,000 feet. It's not flying, it's flying perpendicular. Explain.
Yeah. Okay. So the difference is on a globe, to maintain 30,000 relative to level, you have to actually be going down as opposed to just maintaining over top of a horizontal, which is what we actually assume it to be, as well as sea level to get your altitude in the first place.
This one coming in from Nuclear Creation says, so if we are living on a flat Earth, can we fall off of it? And since we supposedly live on the flat part, then what the F is on the other side? And are other stars and planets also flat?
Oh, so the word other would insinuate that you're begging the question that we are a planet. So they are something different than the Earth. They move top of the Earth, create a sky clock. What's below it? Well, that's why you've always heard as above, so below. It's a hermetic principle. It tracks back forever. It's because, like I showed you with the magnetic field, we're the inertial plane. So we have the same top of the magnetic field toroid underneath it as well. And that's the only way that it could exist. And when people smirk and laugh about it, it's really funny because Harvard still admits they can't explain the magnetic field on the globe, and I can explain it perfectly. So the answer is that you're within the inertial plane. There's the same above, same below, and no, we aren't planets, and no, you can't fall off of the edge with your trifecta question there. That's a ridiculous idea. We're contained. Can you fall off of a shoreline? Secondly, because we measure the Earth to be a plane, we're not claiming the entirety of it or a shape. It could be some type of realm. We have no idea. It doesn't matter. It's illegal to go there.
And we're contained. That's why we have gas pressure, and from there, then you would get a gradient.
So you can't fall off through a container, can you?
This one coming in from
alchemy, huh?
Do appreciate it. High Flyer says, I've flown 22 years as a U.S. Air Force U-2 pilot above 70,000 feet. Every time I've looked outside, the Earth was curved.
Okay, so I want you to really listen carefully to this. There's something called the circumference of light. based on Rayleigh scattering within the air.
You can see that out
so divergent rays have a circumference of light. Now you can use AutoCAD or whatever to explain this to you. If you go up over a flat surface, the circumference of light based on certain altitudes will actually give the illusion of a slight curve. Of course, it doesn't actually match the globe predictions, but secondly, you can't see the actual curvature of the globe from 70,000 feet according to your own math.
And Neil deGrasse Tyson,
which says 62 miles, you can't see it. So it's really, I'm not even saying you're lying. Because the circumference of light over a flat earth, it's possible that you could perceive that, certainly if you really want to believe it, because that is what happens with Rayleigh scattering and a circumference of light. But you wouldn't see the physical curvature according to your own model.
Got it. This one coming in from, do appreciate it. Ayla Baca says, Witsit, when there were direct...
They're killing these questions, too.
When there were direct,
actually, this
Chile
might be even better than
Antonio
the debate itself.
SA might also be
most definitely.
San Antonio.
I should probably.
And what is it? I forgot to say it now.
I should probably cash out. Not cash out.
What is it called? Do you want to somebody knows?
Asking him to talk about the
no, it's like Antagio. I just don't want to pronounce it. It's like
because he didn't get to actually talk about it. But they're probably by now they're not going to get to the end of all the comments.
When there were direct Chile to SA flights,
I think they go through all of them.
Santiago.
In Santiago charters, many of them.
Why? Probably right.
Because it's profitable. Other times, not so much.
Elijah, don't you think Steve's a fair moderator? He's really good at what he does.
Anything because you're following the jet stream.
Yeah, he's
literally going over top of the air current. That's why when you go back the other way, it's significantly slower. Makes no sense.
Really moderate.
Though.
No, he listens.
Might have Ilabaka corrected me.
Well, he's got to control.
Not a fucking moderator.
He's not moderating, but he listens and he lets people speak their mind.
Thanks for
he's a fucking idiot.
And then Nuclear Creation says would love for flat earthers in debate to respond. I don't know if they mean to themselves or to the other speakers.
Whatever, John.
Anyway, Dan the Machine, or maybe it's to their previous question. Dan the Machine says, how do you have a quote-unquote southern hemisphere on a flat earth? Is it circumference? If so, what's west and what's east?
So that's why when I said hemisphere, I quoted it. I air quoted it. East to west is relative to center. We travel using a compass, which is north, which points to the center. You go east and west. That's why you can circumnavigate on both a globe and a flat earth. It is not mutually exclusive in any way. East and west is the same relative to north.
Gotcha. And
have they asked that many questions?
From 2 seconds, as I mentioned, our guests are linked in the description, folks. That includes if you're listening via the podcast. And Javid Ben-Khazmi, thanks for your question.
Well, maybe more than
and Kai just saw Shi Lin on Jake's stream. She believes the biblical map is flat, square map with North Pole in the north edge, not the center, and South Pole in the south edge. Would this map be considered?
I'd have to see it and look out the specifics. Like, to be honest, it's very open right now, and anyone that's an honest researcher and looks into this knows that we don't know the accurate layout of the land, and only people that have a bias are going to say otherwise. So I would be interested to see any and all projections. It's worth looking at.
This one from Robert Summer says, wait, Witsit, are you asserting they wouldn't allow you to become an astronaut?
You have to be a Freemason.
Oh my god!
Yeah, I'm not big into drinking baby blood or being like Freemason, dress up in the dark, playing like dress up with grown adults. So maybe not.
This one coming in from, do appreciate your question. Whiskey Brandt says, why haven't you guys presented one globe proof? I think that's for you, Jen and Taylor.
Damn.
Ooh.
Yeah, we have. So when did you stop beating your wife?
I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't want to go down the same road as always, just presenting the same exact arguments. I think we made a pretty strong case, but a proof really depends on your standards of proof. And Taylor said it best, if you're going to be skeptical, sort of behooves you to be uniformly skeptical. And it's clear that there's a level of skepticism being applied to the globe, even though the evidence does clearly support it, properly interpreted, that's just not being applied to the alternative hypothesis, which sadly doesn't appear to be specific enough to really mount a what might be necessary to disproving the opponent's position.
You got it.
Word salad.
Very good.
I know, right?
Ron Tronimus says actual alleged outer space is pitch black. There are no stars in space. Explain, Taylor and Jen.
What was it again?
They said actual alleged outer space is pitch black. There are no stars in space. Now, explain, Taylor and Jen.
I really want to take this one if it's okay, because let's not say that we can't establish that there are no stars. Maybe the testimony of some of these astronauts went up and they said it was very dark. But let's think about what's going on here. We just had some experiments show us that the atmosphere is really big. What is that doing? It's a lens. What does a lens do? Focuses light. That's why you get the twinkles and all those super fun, beautiful, spiritual geometry, what have you effects. That's
Lenses
all the combined effects of the water in the atmosphere, which is what makes this such a great model for that, because it's got a tremendous amount of conservation of structure, even though it's
lenses focus light, but let them tell it.
Taylor, anything?
Refraction because of wacky doodle air from differences in temperature.
Accept picture evidence
actually distort, like the oil rigs. Like
perspective,
insane.
Don't work for flat Earth. They only work. They only fit a globe model, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's the double standard of evidence. Again, I don't know what else. We can't send everyone to space yet, so I don't know what else you want other than pictures.
Physical measurement of Earth curvature, probably.
Or just prove that you can have gas pressure without a computer.
But we'll move on. It's all good.
This one coming in from, do appreciate it. Kana Bear, let me know if I pronounce it right, says boats don't fall over the edge of an imaginary sphere horizon. We see way further. The globe model was made using flat Earth elevation angle measurements. Taylor.
The globe was
made. There you go. I think he's gonna say that.
The globe model was made using flat Earth elevation angle measurements.
No, I don't know.
Model was made using angle measurements.
A lot of different things. Partially, originally sea navigation. They couldn't make flat maps work, so.
Wow.
No,
shut up. This is why I don't like Dave. Like, he's trying to move it along.
Nah. Witsit, if we find a grain of sand 1 mile from the beach, does that mean the beach goes that far?
This guy should get a PhD in philosophy. That was deep.
I don't understand.
I'll read it one more time.
That sounds like okay.
Basically, the question is how many grains of sand is a beach? So if you have a couple pieces of sand from the beach scattered on the road, does the beach reach to the road, or is that just a piece of the beach that's on the road?
Does it make?
Oh, we're talking about the atmosphere. Oh, okay. Oh, you're saying analogous to the atmosphere.
How many flat spots on Earth does it take to make it?
Yeah. If there's a magical vacuum sitting next to an atmosphere, even though gases have no intrinsic shape and that's stupid, then the gas that keeps going out would still technically be part of the atmosphere. At what point in time do you draw the line? You don't have a road or anything like that.
That's the moon. At the moon.
Right at the moon. That's where it stops.
You can approximate it at the moon, because the moon is what's binding. I mean, you're asking a great question. The moon is what's binding the atmosphere. I don't think this is very well understood, but it would boil off if it weren't for the moon constantly scooping it back in. So this is a very good question.
I like that you at least, I do really like you, Jen, in the sense that you're willing to think outside of what they tell you that we know everything about. So I will give you that. I think that's beautiful, and that's what everyone needs to do regardless of what they think about this subject.
This one coming in from...
I don't think there's anything ridiculous about having a gradient. We can observe
me either. The only way you can have a gradient... But listen, man. The reason you have a gradient is because you have gas pressure. Gas is constantly introduced at the surface level. Most of the gas is coming up from underneath the surface, and we have an electric gradient going up 100 volts per meter on the Earth. So if the Earth is flat and contained, that's exactly what we would have. Okay? Okay.
This one coming in
you would
from,
have gas pressure
I've got
without
to give
the
Austin the
solid
last word on
container.
that one because the question is for him.
Right.
This one coming in from Down in the Rabbit Hole says, good to see you down in the rabbit hole, says, do you think globe cultists will ever admit that zooming in on a terrestrial object from a terrestrial position is completely different from zooming in on a celestial object from a terrestrial position? You can't zoom it back. I can read that again. Would you like? They say, do you think globe cultists, like Taylor, will ever, just kidding. Say, do you think globe cultists will ever admit that zooming in on a terrestrial object from a terrestrial position is completely different than zooming in on a celestial object? So celestial object rather than terrestrial object. So in the first case, it's terrestrial object being zoomed in from a terrestrial position. And others saying, don't you think, are you willing to admit that that's completely different from zooming in on a celestial, so with a C, not terrestrial, but celestial object, from a terrestrial position that you're zooming in from? They said you can't zoom it back.
Wait, how are they different?
I'm not sure what he's saying. They can't zoom it back from, but yeah, there are differences. I'm not sure what differences he wants me to state there are. But I don't know. I guess the one comment I have is the reason you can't zoom back things that go over the horizon from that are on the terrestrial level is because of the curve. And the curve does not rise to the actual horizon line, which you would expect from linear perspective.
You got it. This one coming in from Annie at Purdue. Let me know if I say this right. They say, nowhere in my flight training was I taught to fly as if the earth was flat. Instead, I was taught the four forces of flight, which imply the presence of gravity.
But how come whenever you were trained, they had to negate the gravity vector and you don't ever have to account for it when you fly? No one, it's a ridiculously egregious straw man to say that we are saying they teach pilots in pilot school that the earth is flat. No one's saying that. It's that when you fly the actual plane, you do not personally account for curvature or spin. You fly as if you don't have to worry about that. And you do also not have to make any type of accounting for gravity other than weight itself, of course, which is called lift. It's a plane. So yeah, you have to fly the plane like it's flat, bro.
I'm just not understanding why you would have to account for those.
Because the ground would be dropping down beneath you, bro. And if the earth is spinning, I'm going to land on it. If I'm landing on it going west, then I'm going relative to the earth spin. If I'm going east, I'm going relative to the earth spin. But we don't have to account for any of this. North, south, east, west. We land on runways every which way. We get to fly the planes as if the earth is just sitting there perfectly still and it's completely flat, but actually it's spinning and curving and gyrating sideways and going around the sun and all this other nonsense. So it's just, the answer is relativity fixes all of your problems. That's the answer. It makes it look like it's flat.
Even though it's never been scientifically validated.
And it's a reification fallacy. You can't treat physical properties to conceptual abstractions, including a privation, which is the absence of anything. So it's actually stupid lunacy on its face.
This one coming in from, do appreciate your question. Perpetual Motion says, if Chile and Greenland, and that's... if Chile and Greenland are separated by 8,000 miles, this is, folks, you got to do me a solid. Sometimes it's like I don't understand. So I'm going to read it just as it is. They say, if Chile and Greenland, that's separated by 8,000 miles, is seeing the sun, while New York City, so I think they're saying like if both Chile and Greenland, which are separated by 8,000 miles, are seeing the sun, while New York City, that's 500 miles west, is in the dark. How does that work on a flat Earth? Turning a ball in front of a lamp solves it.
Man, oh my goodness, man. It's called light attenuation. light does not go on forever. And I've explained about 4 times in this debate, there's something, which to be fair, maybe super chatted before, unlikely though. It's called the circumference of light based on the divergent rays. There's Rayleigh scattering of light. Okay, it's a well-known phenomenon. And so is attenuation of light and absorption rate of light. So the idea that the light should go on forever is ridiculous and antithetical to physics that we know exists. It's called a straw man.
This one coming in from Daniel Hagel says, just here to say you got to get David Weiss Flat Earth Sun Moon Zodiac Clock app in the App Store, presumably, on Android and Apple devices. Love you, Dave. Oh, I think they're saying, Dave, we hope that you get this app so that it can be used on Android and Apple devices. Let me know, Dave, if I got that right. Or Daniel, let me know if I got it right. Robert Summers says...
sorry. I was going to say, take the Flat Earth Challenge, watch the video of the day for 2 weeks, and you will definitely probably question the globe, at least, or be a flat earther.
This one from Pivot Cyroy says, shout out to the builders of the Dutch, let's see, Afsluitdijk, one of the longest dams in the world, which you can clearly see curve over the horizon, and which is calculations take into account the Earth's curving during construction.
Every single time that people say this, it's not true. They don't actually account for the actual curvature rate, nowhere close to it at all whatsoever. You can't even build things if you don't maintain level. Secondly, where you claim it's going over the curve of the Earth, that's going to change every single day. So is the Earth breathing in and out? Or are you going to see more of the dam at one point? How does that work? It's because it's all based on atmospheric conditions. So the atmos changes throughout the day. It changes how much you can see. The Earth doesn't breathe in and out. So the dam isn't consistently obstructed by a physical location every single day, and the same amount of the dam is hidden. That's just patently false. And they do not account for 8 inches per mile drop either, because that would be absurd.
You got it. And thank you very much for your question. Robert Summers says, so the answers to my questions were to, in all caps, assert that flat Earth is some kind of tornado or something, and that all astronauts are baby blood drinking Masons. Evidence for that?
Oh, okay. It was just a joke. I don't know if they actually drink the blood of babies, but they are typically Masons. Some of them don't admit it, so yeah, that would be speculation, but they all like to throw up I can't even do it. RV Truth will slaughter me. But they throw up the signs consistently. So the point is that, yeah, I wouldn't be allowed to be an astronaut. But what was the first part of the comment? Not the blood drinking part, but the...
A tornado.
Oh, yeah. So, no, I didn't say the Earth is a tornado. I get you're trying to be facetious, but it's that's a good analogy, a whirlpool, a tornado, of how it's wider, then it gets tighter, because that's the vortexual movement in the ether. And the actual ring laser gyro you guys use to measure the Earth's spin was discovered uses the effect called the Sagnac effect, discovered by a guy named Sagnac, which said it was the vortexual movement in the ether, which also explains the Michelson-Morley. I was explaining the movement of the field of energy over top of the Earth that you're detecting when you look at interferometry patterns in its ring laser gyro.
This one coming in from, do appreciate it, Cana Bear says, boats don't fall over the edge of an imaginary curve horizon. You can see much further than globe model sphere calculations. The globe model was created using flat Earth elevation angle measurements. I think, Cana Bear, we read that one earlier, but I don't know if you missed it, but we did. Maybe you went to the bathroom, but we'll give you... this was exactly the same one that I read. But so if you guys want to respond, let's humor them, because they really want to hear your response to this.
I think it was a little bit different. But yeah, I don't know how you get a globe from flat Earth measurements if it's flat. How is it producing a curve? And the reason you can sometimes see further than the calculated curve of the globe is atmospheric refraction, which can make the curve appear less curved, but cannot make flat appear curved.
Gotcha. This one coming in from Shane from Kentucky. Thanks so much for your kind words. Says, James, you're a legend. Thanks for all you do. Seriously, thanks. I really do appreciate your support. And also, I gotta pass the credit on to the guests. The debaters, the guests, are the lifeblood of the channel. We appreciate them so much, my dear friends. I've got to tell you, they honestly make this show awesome. And so we want to say a huge thank you to them. And Amanda sent in I've got to put this in the old description box because I mentioned it once, but nobody, I hadn't put it in the description box. We have on Modern Day Debate is on Venmo. In case you are like, listen, I want to submit a super chat, but I don't like supporting YouTube because, YouTube takes 30% of super chats, like right off the top. And so if you're like, hey, I don't want to, I'm not really big on giving more to Google, that's fair. We do have a Venmo, and I'll put that in the description box. But Amanda said, don't forget to smash that like button. Thank you so much for your support, Amanda. Seriously, that really does mean a lot. We are encouraged by that. And it's true. Don't forget to hit that like button. We really do appreciate it when you do support the channel that way. But one last thank you. Austin.
Dave, have you ever considered reading the questions that they send off YouTube? Like if they PayPal'd you or Venmo'd you in a question, that way they'd still get the perk of it's just an idea. I try to kind of do that because they take too much of it, man. The little grabblers.
100%. Yeah, that's what I was saying is that I'm going to put it in the description box so that way people can access it in the future, is that we do have PayPal and we do have, we'll put that on the top of the description box just for anybody who's out there, and we'll make sure it's like always in there because some people, I don't blame them. I think everybody in some way, frankly, I think YouTube tends to go after any extreme view, no matter which direction, like politically, for example. Like if you are far enough left, I think that YouTube may actually censor you. And I think if you're far enough right, YouTube will censor you. And so I think everybody, I sympathize if everybody has a little bit of skepticism about YouTube. I think that YouTube's trying to please the mainstream. And so anybody too far out in any direction, YouTube, I think, is not always
dropping the hammer.
Yeah, but want to say, Austin, Kai, Taylor, and Jen, it's been a true pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
They're linked in the description, folks. Do you want to hear more about their views? I bet you do. I mean, you've been listening this long. What are you waiting for? So I'll be back in just a moment with updates about upcoming juicy debates that you don't want to miss. So stick around, and I'll be right back, folks.
That was fun.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, that was we were doing live commentary over a live debate. That was cool.
Thanks for doing that, Helio. That was cool.
What do you rate the Glovers, Matthew, from 1 to 10?
They did like a 4 at best.
Dude, Matt, you got to get on that show and show them what's up, man.
I don't know if I can think on my feet as fast as Witsit, and I don't know. It'd be interesting.
I mean, well, dude, they get flat earthers on there sometimes that don't know their ass from a hole in the ground. So you could probably go in there and show your ass, bro.
How would I?
You've been talking to us, bro, because he does. I mean, Witsit goes on there once in a while, but some of the flat earthers that he gets on there, you could tear him. You could tear him apart.
What other fucking idiot flat earthers are getting on there and being stupid?
I mean, that Australia guy.
Yeah, there's several.
Is he not good at talking?
He's not from Australia. Yeah, Flat Earth of Australia. I think that's his name or whatever.
He's not a good debater. He's not a master debater.
He's a shithead. Just saying.
I know. I came in a little hot on that one. It'd be so funny if I debated somebody on that, though. I'd rage quit.
Well, it's just like the reason that a lot of us don't get on there is because obvious reasons, but we'll support Witsit on there.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just like he's going to get like super chat, and just like he said right before the end of the thing, he's like, "Yeah, I love the super chats, but every single super chat you give me, YouTube takes 30% of that." It's like, cool. There's a better way to actually support the channel. But anyway,
hey, Nitro's back. Hey, what's up, Nitro?
But anyway, it was pretty good.
What's up, Alberto?
Nitro Earth is back. I don't know if y'all were talking to him earlier before the debate.
Matter of fact, I recorded that, and I'm gonna Contact Steve. I don't think he'll mind if I upload it, with our commentary and stuff.